if you wanted to.
Are we live now, Jean?
Oh, no, no.
Oh, okay.
I just wanted to make sure it was recording.
Oh, okay, all right. I mean, I was like, wait, we have another minute, right? And then we can go on, because last time there was some technical difficulties.
How long did Tim hang around today, you know, Gordon?
Yeah, that was wonderful.
He stayed, I think, to the end of the day.
Oh,
Wow.
really?
Yeah.
He needs to take it easy.
Yeah, I told him that.
He looks good, though.
Yeah, he
He
does.
looks real good.
But he looked good before this all happened too, you know?
Well, you know, usually sometimes the stuff gets way out of hand.
I'm sure he needs to be back in for his own mental health.
Oh,
So Frank said the dry,
This was separate. I know.
the dry
This
well
was
is
just-
outside the
We
fence.
put this here
Straight-
so you guys can
Oops,
see.
sorry.
Sorry, Gordon, I heard them talking about
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
What is it?
Those are
That's,
current.
that's the
GEG.
current sheet so that you would see what we, what,
This is the current.
yeah, so like right now it's right here. So I'm sorry,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I meant to say that. Sorry about that, Gordon.
No, no, that's fine.
All right, are we ready? It's 6 o'clock on the dot.
I'm sure.
Everyone good?
Ready?
It won't
Good?
be,
Okay.
I guess. Okay.
Okay, you're all set.
Thanks. All right, good evening and welcome to the November 15th, 2021 regularly scheduled school committee meeting. It is now 6 o'clock and I will call this session to order. As a reminder, this meeting is being both audio and video taped. And if there is anyone else who is recording it, I'd ask them just to let us know now. I don't see anybody in the Zoom call either, so at this time, we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll start with a roll call. Heather, do you want to start us today?
Sure. Heather Brown, Director of Curriculum.
Elizabeth Marcy and Boucher.
Bill Fonseca?
Sarah Trulio?
Gordon Smith, Superintendent of Schools.
Antonella Rochella?
Gregory Thompson.
Pamela Blair, Assistant Superintendent for Business.
Excellent, thank you. And our first order of business is approval of last meeting's minutes.
Move to approve the November 1st, 2021 regular session meeting minutes.
Motion made by Bill,
I'll second.
second by Beth. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. And that motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Opportunity for visitors to address the committee. The folks here with us are on the agenda. And then I don't see anyone in the session as of right now, so I think we're okay to move forward. Committee and subcommittee. Greg, you want to start today?
I would love to start, but I have nothing this evening, so
Okay.
thank you so much.
Thank you. And no?
I don't have anything.
Gordon? You normally add a little something.
Well, two things. We had the National Honor Society last week, which went really well and inducted, I believe, our largest group since I've been superintendent, and they're quite impressive. Miss Margin Boucher's daughter was on the stage being celebrated. So that was wonderful to see, and it was also wonderful to see that we were back in person.
Yeah.
Even though we had safety protocols in place with the masks and keeping families a couple seats between each family, it was nice to have a group in the auditorium. And then secondly, today, and I'm sure many of you have seen the video, we welcome back Dr. Allen to Brooksland Park Middle School. And he came back around 10:30. It was quite the celebration. And we're just ecstatic to have him back. So he'll be working half days, and we'll start the transition back. He's just having an incredible recovery, and we're so excited to see the progress he's made.
It's terrific celebration welcoming him back. Bill?
Well, Gordon took both my items. That's okay. Congratulations to all the recipients at National Honor Society last week. It was very well attended, and to Gordon's point, it was great to be back in person. And I was fortunate enough to be able to attend the welcome back to Mr. Allen this morning, and just the enthusiasm of the kids, it was amazing. You know, this is all part of the education process. You know, it's not always about the data and stuff. I mean, just the genuine care that these kids have for that individual is amazing. And the emotions were was overflowing. It was quite an event, and I know Gordon will expand on that later, but it was well worth it.
You're able to go.
I don't know, I guess I'll start with, I got my last Mcas results for child this year,
Great.
which is super exciting, because the rest of them are all grown up. And that also said, again, I did go to the National Honor Society, I'll say, because my kid did get in, and it was super exciting. And it kind of got you tears because the kids were there, and we were there. And they were so excited, the kids afterwards taking pictures and stuff, and that's really, and then you had the game going, the soccer game going at the same time. And so it was just nice you felt like the school's alive again, and was huge.
Good way to put it.
Yeah,
Good way to put it.
yeah.
And soccer, we have a congratulations to the soccer team.
Congratulations to
Final
our
four.
soccer team, Final Four.
It's great. Very
Exciting match
game.
yesterday.
Oh, and the high
they
school's
play-
doing a Spirit Week this week.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Throw that out.
actually, they play again Wednesday at Assabet
Ashburn Valley,
Valley Regional Technical School,
We wish
5
them
o'clock.
played Canton.
best of
Yeah.
luck.
And you have 3 out of the Final 4 teams in Division II are Western Mass teams.
Yeah. West Springfield and Long Meadow.
It's terrific. Excellent. So thank you for that. Thanks for all the great news going around the district, and glad we were able to share that this evening. So we have our first proposal of the night. We have guests in the audience.
We do have a guest. We have Mr. Morneau here, and he has a
You
proposal
can sit right
that's
here, right up at that
yeah,
microphone.
please.
Perfect.
That is in your packets. And this is actually something that has been approved pending our approval by Community Preservation to provide some funding. And I'll let Mr. Morneau describe the details, but I think simply put, this is something that it's a wall ball project, and it would allow many of our sports and many of our athletes to practice outside of their team practice time, practice skill building, and it would give them an organized place to do so. And I'll let Mr. Morneau expand on that.
Yeah, thank you, Superintendent Smith, and thank you, school committee, for having me in today and giving an opportunity to present the wall ball proposal. You've got the packet through community preservation. Since that time, as Superintendent Smith mentioned, community preservation has approved the project pending approval from the school committee, and they've actually approved it at a higher level, an additional $10,000 from them. The total project now is about $71,000 for the wall. It looks, if you've been to Long Meadow, it's very similar to the lacrosse wall that's in Long Meadow. It's 39 feet wide, it's 16 feet tall, concrete. On each side of the wall is going to be turf, about 25, probably about 30 feet of turf on each side, and then some protective netting. So I helped put the project together with people at eLeaf, and with people from the J. Karen Foundation, which is a nonprofit in town for somebody who was very connected to lacrosse throughout his career, and also with the Hampden County Sheriff's Office, who's also getting involved in the project, which is a little bit outside of what's in your materials. While they haven't formally committed, they've informally committed, the sheriff has, and the J. Karen Foundation, to adding to this project by painting the wall. I think I've sent something around. You may have got through the email as to what it looks like. They've also informally committed, pending approval from their board, to have between $500 and $1,000 scholarship for a boy and a girl at East Long Meadow High School each year. And they're looking into doing some other beautification, I would call it, around the area where the lacrosse wall is going to be and where the athletic stadium is, including, some touch up and some paint. So, I just think it's a great project, as Superintendent Smith mentioned, for all of the kids in town, ranging in age from 6 all the way up through, the kids that graduate from high school, come back from college and want to practice, to do so for sports like lacrosse and soccer and baseball and hockey. That's really the project. If anybody has, any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them.
Just to add, so the location that we were thinking is, it would be, if you think of the stadium over here, you're facing the stadium, it's going to be to the right, and it becomes part of basically that outer fence, if you will, of the stadium. it would be to the right of where our players usually enter. There's a individual entrance on that part of the gate, part of the fence, and then it would be to the right of that, and you would have turf on either side, correct?
Yeah, there's expected to be turf on, but there will be turf
On either side.
on each side. Yep.
And
Yeah.
I think the drainage basin is on the outside of the fence, behind the two snack shacks now.
Oh, it is up front.
That's what I've gotten so far in my
Okay.
quick research.
We
Yeah,
were
so-
just talking about, Jeff, in future projects, as you know, with the turf and stadium project, we had conceptually at least discussed the bathroom facility, storage facility, snack shack facility. So my one question to Mr. Smith was, would this impede on those future plans? So we're thinking that most of the infrastructure that we put in with the original project is more towards the front. We're just verifying that one little step, and we'll get that information. The one other thing I wanted to ask, it's a pretty big wall relative to others, that's correct?
It's the same size actually as the wall that's in Long Meadow.
Okay.
It's exactly the same size.
And then it will actually be continuous with the fence that's existing, the chain link fence will butt up against the sides?
Yeah, so yeah, that's the plan. I guess there's, in talking with the athletic director, Kevin McGee, that's the plan. So if you were to take the wall would be replacing the fence.
Right.
And then the idea is to have temporary netting on the side about 20 feet out from each side of the wall, where there'd be temporary netting so that goals could be placed there, like a hockey goal, field hockey goal, lacrosse goal, so that people could shoot that way and the ball wouldn't go flying or potentially injure somebody. So I'm not exactly sure how the fence yet is going to directly connect to the wall, but that's something that is in the, it's in the plans. I understand from the school committee's perspective or public safety perspective that there's a concern of people coming, I'm reaching around, but coming in from the field side onto the turf side during games or getting access. So,
Right, the stadium has to be able to be locked up and secured, so if it's not contiguous, then there would be gaps. We can't, I guess that would be something that would definitely need to be addressed. If not, then I would recommend a different spot for it. The other thing is you were talking about temporary netting that will surround the turf completely, the turf of the project, or just on the inside, extending the wall, basically?
Yeah. So if the if this was the wall that was, if this is the, this is the fence line and that's the wall, what we're thinking is going out another 20 feet in this direction and then having temporary netting that goes the entire 60 feet on each side, 20 feet over here, 60 feet on this side. And then this being the turf over here, another 30 feet this way of temporary netting. And we're working on, or I've been working with Athletic Director McGee and some others about what type of netting is the best, but there's two different types of quotes. There's quotes that range from, let's just call it 5,000 to 7,500 for what they call portable netting, which is put down typically with sandbags. And then they have a significantly more expensive type of temporary netting that is it's much easier to move and it's a little bit heavier set, but it's significantly more expensive. And so if we can get that netting, that would be more useful to the athletic department long-term, but it's a matter of, because it can be used for so many different things. It's just a matter of funding and whether we can raise the money.
Well, and some of them have actual fencing, chain link fencing. Some of the other projects have, in the pictures, seem to have chain link fencing. My concern with the netting, and I'm sure you've seen the batting cages out there, you put down temporary netting on grass, well, you can no longer maintain the grass and it grows into weeds and gets tall and obnoxious. So I don't know, within that design, if we can address that issue, because we'd like to keep that, obviously the inside of that field as nice as possible. So have you looked at chain link fence as opposed to the temporary netting and then some sort of concrete underneath it? I know that's much bigger of a project, but just in terms of aesthetics long-term, I worry that a temporary net is only going to be a hassle for the Department of Public Works to maintain. With the grass growing up underneath it,
Yeah.
I'm in favor of the project. I love it. And I love that you come forward with a whole plan and ready to go. And I just want the specifics to be detailed out, because what we don't want is a future project or another project that we have to take on as a school district for additional funding, whether it be fencing or not. We have a lot of the projects we want to do in addition. As we said, that bathroom is on the list too, so.
Yeah, no, that's something to look into, and I can certainly get quotes from a local fencing company, maybe they'd be willing to do it on some other type of basis too, to get that done and work with that, so. You know, as long
Just
as,
look at that batting cage, if you look at the batting cage out there, you'll see what I'm talking about, because it's just all grown up around it, and to bring that inside our stadium, you know, our crown jewel of the sports district here in East Long Meadow.
Survive the construction project.
Yeah, it will.
How
So-
tall would this how tall would the netting be?
So-
How high up does it go?
yeah, so the netting would be, they range, but I've gone out with athletic director McGee, and it's usually 10 feet is probably the minimum, and 12, you know, if you get up to 12 feet, you're probably still good. Anything over that is probably excessive.
Yeah.
So it's between 10 and 12 feet. And the reason is just because when someone's throwing the ball towards the goal or towards the net, you want to have it high, you know, you don't need it super high, but you need it high enough so that it's protecting the other people around, and also so the balls aren't going flying. So if you know, I don't know how the
To that point though, so you're saying the balls from the other side? Is that where they're coming from? In your situation where you need the netting to prevent it from going further?
Yeah, so you have, I'm just using this phone. So if this is the wall along the fence, someone's throwing the ball into the wall or whatever, let's say it's soccer. They're practicing. They might be practicing here, but they might have, usually there's a goal of some sort over here that if they wanted to then after practice, just shoot it towards the goal, that there needs to be some type of netting or there should be some type of netting behind for safety purposes. So 10 feet is plenty, high enough to go around. And, you certainly could, on the sides, if you think that a permanent 3 foot or whatever it is, chain link fence along, with just the netting, sort of in the same spot as what the fence is for mowing purposes, you could do
We have a
that.
3 foot or a 6 foot fence that we're gonna take out. Why don't we slide the wall away from the fence and at least use the existing fence as one backstop of the two? Because we're ripping out a fence, you see what I'm saying, to only hope to get another fence.
You're
30 feet
using
away.
the field on either side.
Right.
Yeah, but we'd use that section of the fence that the.
Yeah, no, I understand
It's
that.
just one less section of
Yeah.
the
I mean,
rectangle of fence you would need to purchase.
it may make sense to walk this with DPW.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And since they're the ones who maintain it, and get their ideas, plus they also work with the fencing companies, putting up fences, whether it be our fence or
Yeah.
other fences in town, so we can get some ideas there.
And what about grading? I know it's not level there. Would it need to be graded first?
That's part of the project.
Yeah.
So we've got a contractor that's going to come in and do the grading, and either E-Leaf, it's going to get paid for. It's going to get paid for either through E-Leaf or the J. Karen Foundation. They're going to come in. They're going to do all the grading work so that it's going to be level on both sides in advance.
How lovely is everybody? Like E-Leaf, the J. Karen Foundation, and the community preservation.
No, it's
Like this wasn't
fantastic.
even on my radar. I think that's pretty cool.
But it's just collaboration. I think it's
Yeah,
great.
no, it is. It's great.
Can we approve with a contingency on the final design? Are you going to go to further design phase, Jeff, or this would be it in terms of the design?
No, I mean, in terms of the design, basically the money needs to be approved through
Yeah.
Community Foundation. And if they
Right.
did that, I'm being told that, this would be done, complete and finished in March sometime, weather pending. They could get it all
Oh,
done
yeah.
and approved in
Yeah,
March. If the fencing, if the fencing is the concern, we can add that to the program. From my perspective, it's really just about getting the final money approval from E-Leaf. And then if fencing's part of it, we just got to raise the money or use the money to put the fencing in. I'm not that worried about,
Okay.
it's not a ton of, it's expensive, but we'll get the money
Yeah.
to do it.
Figure it out.
We'll figure that last piece of the fencing out. And if worse comes to worse, we've got the money you don't even really need the fencing, to be honest with you. I'm only suggesting the fencing for safety purposes. So there's plenty of these walls that you've seen in there, or if you found more online. Long Meadow doesn't have a fence.
Right.
They've got woods on one side, there's no room on either
Why don't
side.
we do that then? Why don't we move it somewhere else?
Well, you do have a lot of different things. One of
not
the
need
reasons
that
why they're
fence.
placing it there was because of the many different things that have been put underneath those fields, whether it be electrical conduits or the tank basin that we were talking about.
Yeah, back in the flat where the concert is usually, where the old
Well, I
basketball
think it's
court.
running, your electrical conduit running towards the press box or press box, I guess is the best way to describe it. You also have in the ground plumbing for the 3 water cannons, should we ever want to finish that. So
I guess I would just rather see without the net. If we could go with the goals towards the back or something, if we could work it out, or go with the fence, I would much prefer just seeing that net sitting on the grass. It's either gonna get weed whacked the first day, or it's never gonna get trimmed, and it's just gonna be a mess. So if you, and we can talk to Bruce, Jeff, I know you're in it for the right reasons, so we'll do it
Yeah.
right by the town. I'm cool with it as long as we're, just keep that in mind.
I think it's a great idea to
Yeah.
have DPW come and check out.
Yeah.
Yeah, the project doesn't, the only project that really needs to be approved is the money, so that we can get the contractor approved and get the wall put in. Everything else beyond that is all, you don't want a fence? No fence. You
Are
want,
you gonna go with the solid concrete, or are you gonna go with the poured, or are you gonna go with like the panels?
sure, so they're panels.
Okay.
So you'll see in there, the design, yeah, so that's hopefully what it's gonna look like. You know, and what's great is an East Long Meadow student who had just graduated Kevin Shields had put that design together, you know, all by himself, as opposed to somebody doing it for $15,000.
Right.
But you'll see in the quote for the concrete that they're actually, it's about 5 or 6 actual slabs of, I think they're like almost like Jersey barriers. And that's how they come in. And it's the same, it's a different contractor, but it's the same stuff that was used in Long Meadow and was used at least 1 or 2 other towns for their walls.
And this is as far over to the right as we feel, like if you're facing the stage, it's as far over to the right as we can go.
Well, it's
Just feeling the
moving it
further away
away
you
from
get.
where the players come in.
Yeah,
And it is being situated between where we have storage and where we use other areas inside for track. That's another thing, you know, this is our throwing field outside for track.
right.
So we have to be cognizant of that depending on
Yeah,
where we.
no, yeah, I would think more of the back or something, but I'm okay with this will work.
Yeah, and wherever you know, obviously you can go take a look at it. And I think anywhere along that fence line where the school committee or the athletic department and Superintendent Smith feel is appropriate is fine. I got this through, you know, consultation with athletic director McGee, and who I think, you know, we walked it out there, walked it off, and it looks like it's going to be in that general vicinity.
Cool,
All right.
it's awesome.
I think it's, like you said, a terrific collaboration, a great idea. I know lacrosse in general has been gathering steam in our community, and I know there's a lot of kids who will benefit, and I think it's just terrific that you are here to keep the kids at the focus and
Great.
something to our
This
community.
is set up, you have, it can be field hockey, it can be soccer, it can be.
Yeah. Could be anything.
And
Across.
all those teams had great balls.
Yeah,
They
there you go.
did, certainly
Put a
did.
basketball hoop on it and be all set.
I can't tell you how many times I've heard that comment, whether it be from the community or wherever.
That's your
So-
next one, Jeff. You're not-
See, you put it back, you put it right at the end, right there.
Yeah, that's
Put it
right.
right off the fence.
Oh, yeah, see?
There you go.
I'm just gonna say I have some ideas on that, but I'm not gonna complicate getting this project done for that. So once this one's done, I have
Think about
One at a time.
where would that dream go in relationship to this?
I
So-
have an idea which I'll share offline
Yeah, there you go, smart.
at any time with anybody.
Wise man.
But I'm not complicating this project with basketball. Because the great part about this is it really can get done by March for this upcoming season for the kids that are,
That's great.
playing lacrosse or the other kids that want to practice in the off season. So
That's great.
it got on the radar quick and it can get done quick and it's a lot of community collaboration like you said. So I think it's great. Thank you all.
So with that, I would move that we approve the wall project as discussed this evening.
Okay, I'll second.
Motion made by Greg, second by Beth. Any further discussion? And you will at some point connect with DPW?
Yeah, we'll coordinate with DPW
Just
so
to
that
take
we
a
can,
final walk.
yeah, I think what we have to do is identify the exact spot,
Okay.
think about all the different things that we've mentioned, the design, but also maintenance, efforts and
Because it looks so nice if we could, and I say we like I'm doing it, put a proper fence around it. It'll look beautiful. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It will.
Cool.
All right, all those in favor,
Thank you.
please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay, and that motion carries 5-0.
Thank you all so
Thank
much.
you.
Really
Thank you.
appreciate
Pleasure
it.
meeting you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Good night.
Thank you. All right. We have Lori Alvarez tonight as well, so Lori doesn't mind coming up. We're excited to have you here this evening. We know there's been a lot kind of going on around food services and many challenges and some bright spots that you're kind of here just to update us relative to
Yeah,
school
again,
issues.
thank you for having me. First and foremost, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have, but I would also like to remind all of our East Long Meadow families that lunch is universally free for all students for this entire school year. So it's a great opportunity to, sample what we have in all the schools for lunch. And it's open and available to everybody. So I did send a one pager, and I don't know if there was any specific questions. I know I threw a lot in there, and there's a lot going on with our food and paper and labor shortage and all the different things. So I didn't know what specific information you needed
So
from me.
supplies are somewhat of an issue. You addressed a lot in here, and I appreciate that in writing. One of the things we had talked about was, and you just addressed, was the packaging or what we serve the food in. Do we still have the trays, the old plastic trays in the dishwashers? Is that not something we have?
Yes, no, we are utilizing them at Maple Shade, Mountain View, and Birchland Park. Meadowbrook's in a unique situation where the children are still eating in the classrooms. So everything's packaged in takeout to-go containers so that we can travel the hallways, leave the meals at the classrooms individually. And they have to be in a closed container. So those are all disposable.
Does your staff roll that out to the classrooms?
Yeah, we load carts each lunch and head down the hallways, and drop off. It's quite the process, but it's worked out so far. And then the high school, we've always just utilized disposables because our regular stuff disappears too quickly.
Oh.
Yeah, you buy a reusable and the kids just throw it away like it's a disposable, so.
Really?
Yes,
They figured it out in Maple Shade.
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
I know, it's too bad.
Well, two reasons I asked. The one is the supply chain issue, but also
Yeah.
environmentally, to be using disposable packaging seems
It's a lot, and it's
counterintuitive.
very costly too.
Yeah, so could we retrain our students to not?
I would love to. We've sat, in fact, I think Superintendent Smith has been on some of the, we've had a nice small group of the environmental club that we've sat with throughout the years here at the high school. And it just never has enough oomph,
Yeah.
and it ends up being one sole student coming forth and saying, yes, I'm going to do it, but they can't
Yeah.
be and monitor all lunches, and
It's a huge
it's a big undertaking.
Yeah.
They
So,
need some moms to stay, I'll do it. I'll stand by the trash bears. Let them throw one once, really. They
They'll learn quick.
won't have to again. Yeah, it is. But I would like to see that. I think if they made it a whole school goal and it was something that was done, talked about in advisory and talked about multiple times at lunch, that, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I'd like
I
to
think they have a good group of kids. Again, I met with Dr. Allen and some of the kids at Birchland Park who started a little environmental club. And we actually were able to get some reusable closed containers. So during our return in April, and we had to have everything closed and covered, we had recycle product that Dr. Allen brought in, and then we were able to use. And they have a good group of kids there that are really committed. So as they make their way up towards high school, we'll bring them on board.
I
Yeah.
wonder also if it's a question of just changing up our barrels in the cafeteria to
not set
not
the tray.
open barrels, but a little bit more of a, ones with slots, and we start in signage, using signage.
Yeah, again, we've worked with the environmental club and even the town, Liz Bone.
Lisbon, yeah.
Has come, and it just seems to fall to the wayside no matter what we do. In the kitchen, we have, the blue barrels for recycling our cans, our large number 10 cans and things. But yeah, somehow the kids in those trays.
Yeah.
And so of course, it hasn't just been the paper goods that there's been a shortage on. There's also been
Oh.
some supply issues for
Food.
food, right? Maybe you should.
Food has been, unbelievable. It's actually pretty scary. And you've been in the grocery stores,
Well,
you've
that's, I
seen
was just
it.
gonna say, you walk in a
It's-
grocery store and there's things they can't get anymore, and it translates into the same problems that we're facing here.
Oh, absolutely. And then it's multi-level, from the manufacturer not being able to get drivers to distribute, to being stuck to everything. In fact, I had about a 12-day plus gap of getting my regular food delivery order, every day biting my fingernails saying, "Are you coming today?"
Well, you've done an amazing job. I would just like to really remind folks
Thank
out
you.
there, because you've had to make a lot of last minute changes for menu, right? When
Yes, I've been
it's
trying to, I did send out to the district, Project Bread, and Desi put together a nice little video, and, we shared a little blurb with the East Long Meadow families about all the supply chain issues. And whenever we have a menu change, I email, all the principal secretaries, they notify the families of staff, it goes out. Knock on wood, it's only happened a couple of times, but, we plug along. I have, my staff has been working really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I gotta say, I was really I know you guys are still working hard, but last year, that setup you had with the meals was really outstanding. I just couldn't even believe it.
Yeah,
What
it
you put
was,
together, how well it ran, the fact it was being done.
Yes.
Your staff worked crazy hours doing it, and you really. It
yeah,
was
oh,
really
thank you,
impressive.
yeah. And it was just, that was a mind, you had to take it and just change your mindset and do something. This year's a little bit different, because you're like, okay, we can do change, we can manage, but not if no food shows
Yes.
up. So that one, it's been a little bit more stressful to, adjust to what's coming at the, delivery. So,
And Laura, you're a part of the whole state, right? A group of food service directors that you guys kind of get together and try to help each other with the challenges, don't you?
oh, yeah, I do belong to the School Nutrition Association, and Desi's been great too. They really provided with that department regular Zoom meetings and giving us help and information on, what things are coming down the line, or, alternative things that we can do. So it's just a matter of just keeping on top of it and keeping our fingers crossed.
And how's it going with that? I think at the last school committee meeting, I had mentioned that there was possibly a grant that was coming out.
Oh,
Lori was gonna, so maybe you can give us an update on that.
there is an equipment grant through Desi, and I will revisit it, and DBW Joe Dunn's been wonderful. They come check it out. Apparently I don't have enough juice in the high school to get new equipment. It's, amperage is a problem, but he's been great. He looks at the specs for me. He comes out and sees and, you know, because I would love to get and need some new equipment at the high school,
Was it
which
a
I
large
know.
steamer that you needed or?
Right now, we have a very small steamer and it would be nice to get an additional one, but the one we have is, bottom is rusting out. So you steam and then the water comes all out the bottom. But yeah, he's been good working on it with me to see what we can get, but it's gonna be hard to be able to get that grant processed by Friday
Right, so
with
it's
the
due this week.
information. Yeah, it's due this week and it just, the items that are out there that we've looked at is the school can't handle the electrical
system
needs of
can't
it.
handle Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
They don't need lights on when they eat.
No,
It's
oh,
more than
Lights
that.
on when they
no,
eat.
yeah,
We
dim
just
the
fixed
lights,
that
we're
problem.
steaming carrots.
We used to shut down
We have to
the
figure out where to
PE
put the
lights
trays. I don't know.
for the dishwasher, am I correct?
Oh, the
We
PE?
used to shut
Yeah.
down, we did fix that.
Oh, yeah, that was, yeah, we have a whole new electrical panel inside there,
Right.
but
That was one of the
we're at
projects.
the
that we
max,
did.
Yeah.
that's the max.
But it didn't increase the amperage because
No.
we're just kind of at the max.
It was more around safety and
Yeah,
Yes,
protecting from fire.
Now, is
Yes.
everything electric in there, or do you run anything on like gas or other type of fuel? It's all electric?
it's all electric
It
in
is,
there.
okay.
Yeah, this school doesn't have the,
All right.
Yeah.
I
gotta
gotta
be
ask.
careful with gas.
Well, I know.
yeah.
but, you
Well,
know.
Birchland Park has,
Right.
some gas
Yeah.
items, yeah.
Well, when we build the new building here,
Do both.
make sure
Yeah.
that
That's
we
true.
talk with Lori about the kitchen and
Yeah,
what the needs
kitchen
would be. I think that would be useful.
Oh, yeah, that, I would
Help
really
us out with
appreciate that. It'd be,
discussion,
yeah,
Oh,
because
yeah.
it is, you know, and then we have a lot of, input from places that are very savvy
Right.
in school related, because it's different than doing a restaurant kitchen,
Sure.
so.
Lori, at
Yeah.
the last meeting also, I talked about the reimbursement rate. I had thrown out an amount, but I'm
Oh.
not sure, like, how is that going?
I
with
did,
your-
I did update it in the one-page document. So with the reimbursement rate that we are getting is a little bit higher because of how we're operating under the SSO, under the National School Lunch Program. The USDA is allowing a little bit higher reimbursement, which is very helpful, but given the increase in cost, it's still, it's.
Yeah, I mean, the example you gave, tinfoil went up almost 3 times.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and
Over
even
3 times the
like,
price.
And that, the
And,
revolving
um,
account was down, right? Is that what prompted the discussion?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly, because I was giving them the, how we ended the
So what's the
fiscal year.
projection long-term on that? Are we gonna be in the negative at some point or heading towards it?
no, I hope not.
Okay.
We
Cautiously
we're-
optimistic.
we are
Cautious.
cautiously optimistic.
Right.
And hopefully, you know, with not needing high ticket items, we're okay. I'm not at the, as of the end of October, I have $178,000 balance, but that's 75,000 short from the required
Which
um,
we usually talk about.
balance, yeah, that Desi would like. Again, I don't think there's a
District.
school district around that is operating, you know,
Yeah.
on a,
I think every district,
Positive.
just like we are helping the food service department with ESSER
I was
grants.
gonna say,
Um,
we'll be able to help you out
absolutely.
with that.
yes,
Yes.
oh yeah.
Figure it
Pam's
out.
been wonderful, especially for all the items that we don't typically use.
Right.
I just,
All the new packaging.
Oh,
The
yeah, I mean, when
packaging.
this all started and Lori came to me and she said, oh my gosh, the cost of this paper, you know, you start getting these purchase orders and became very apparent that the district had to help. So we started to have those conversations here. The grant
Mhm.
funding came in. So it's just been a really good partnership and we're very grateful that we have those funds to be able
yes,
to
thank
help.
you. That's been very beneficial.
Well, thank you. I mean, what you've done is beyond commendable over the past 2 years and doing it without a full staff as well and continuing to ensure that kids are receiving nutritious meals and receiving the best quality that they possibly can. So we appreciate your efforts, and if there's ways that we can help or support, just continue to keep us in the loop and let us know.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Lori.
Lori.
Thank you. Good to
Appreciate
see everybody.
Good to see you too.
Take care.
It was nice to have people in person today.
Right?
Yeah.
Have a good night, Lori. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so moving on to wall status.
I think we're gonna project it onto at least two screens. Unfortunately, it looks like that screen is giving us trouble. But once we get it, there it is. Once we get it on the screens, in your packets, we have, basically a fall status report that, provides and pulls from a number of different, sort of data points, if you will, and what we've done through the course of September and October and into November. And hopefully this information and discussion then fuels where our final SMART goals end up and the action steps, probably most importantly. And I think as we go through this, one of the things that we have to keep in mind is that fully coming back from the pandemic probably is more than a 1 year challenge, that this is going to be multiple years, which is why I think that the federal funding goes over the course of at least 2 school years, and in some cases with ESSER 3, almost
Yeah, 2024,
Yeah,
September of
3 school years.
2024.
Because we want to focus on the different support mechanisms that we may need as we continue to monitor and identify needs in our students. And as we look at something such as the department's accelerated roadmap, we also want to identify curriculum and build ourselves for the future, high quality curriculum, which is some of the things that we're doing right now, both with our literacy program and in one of our pilot programs for math. So our look is more than a year, if you will. So first thing that we knew we needed to do, and this is something that all of you know and have heard and been part of the discussions, is we needed to reconnect and just establish that relationship with our students and the idea that they're going to be with us 6 to 7 hours a day in a much more structured setting than they had been in. And so, all 5 of our schools are really working at, and our professional development has been assisting in this, in making sure that we're integrating our social emotional education with our academic curriculum. We all have always had some type of social curriculum. We've been using Second Step. We've advanced to their most current version of Second Step at the elementary schools, as well as the curriculum that the Mass Association for Aggression Reduction, which is out of Bridgewater State University. And actually that's a free curriculum that they put together, which is nice, and that's for schools. And actually we've been using that since 2011 when they first started the center. Actually, they started the center in 2010. And so there's some good stuff there. The high school and the middle school added to their schedules a block specifically for social emotional education, whether it be the advisory or the Spartan block. They're looking at not only how is that being used this year, but how do we use it in future years to be more effective and time efficient. Our nurses have been exceptional. I needed to get that bulletin, and they continue to be exceptional as a connection between our families and the school building, and they continue to build that relationship, especially given that we are in person now and we're dealing with more than just COVID-related issues. We're dealing with the full gambit that our health rooms have dealt with in the past, along with the COVID protocols and so forth. With that, you had heard, or as we continue to talk about connections between the school and families and how we support students, you had heard last year us talk quite a bit about our multi-tiered support system teams at the building level. And we did a lot of professional development with them to build skills for many different staff members who may have not been in leadership positions before. And I think that's starting to show some real benefit now as we've started this year and the teams are really up and running and starting to look at a variety of data. Panorama really is just the resource that pulls the data in. And then they get to look at trends and see where their students are in the school, and then put in specific support systems that can help the current students who are there. And so we're starting to see that really take off. We, with some of the ESSER funding, expanded our counseling staff, and that's really been a huge benefit at our elementary schools. And we continue for now the third year with River Valley Counseling. All 5 schools are utilizing River Valley Counseling. We have over 50 students across the district who are utilizing the services of that partnership. And so that's something that both shows you the need, but also was really terrific that we pre-pandemic had developed this partnership with River Valley Counseling, because post-pandemic, or in the pandemic, I guess we're not post-pandemic yet, that's wishful thinking, but hopefully we will get there. This is something that is a need, and we need to have the resources to help our students. Because if we're not working with our students socially, emotionally, and looking at mental health for all involved in the school community, then we're not able to do the job that we want to do, which is allow students to have the opportunity to grow academically throughout their time with us from pre-K to 12. So these are things that we had thought about coming out of the summer and are in place. Talking about some of the data that we are collecting, all of this is flowing into Panorama so that when the MTSS team meets, they can look at this stuff quickly. They don't have to go searching for it. But these are just averages. As you look at our schools from the beginning of the school year through November 10th. And so what I did was, as you can see on the screen, you have our current daily attendance average for the schools, where you see Meadowbrook there 94.3%, Maple Shade 95.6%, Mountain View 94.8%, Birchland at 96.2%, and the high school at 95.5%. I also gave you the pre-COVID numbers, same time frame, beginning of school to that November 10th. It's helpful to know, and that's why the asterisk is there, is that those numbers include our quarantined folks. So if we had close contacts out, they're in that percentage. And we're not that far off. Obviously, we'd like those numbers to be up, because one of our benchmarks is 95% or more in terms of our daily attendance average. We're close in many cases, in some cases exceeding it, but it's good to know that one, that we're close, but two, these are numbers that have our close contacts who had to be quarantined within them.
I was wondering, are we finding that parents maybe are keeping their kids home because potentially they think that maybe if they're a little sicker than they might normally be, or
We haven't seen, at least to my knowledge, and I haven't had direct discussion about that, but there hasn't been a lot of discussion about people keeping students home.
Okay.
It's been us contacting and say that they've been, a child's been a close contact, and so then they have to quarantine. Since our last meeting, we did have a discussion just around tightening up and making sure that we're looking at, basically when you're looking at the, if you're looking at a symptomatic student, and we haven't, say, had a positive test, but it's in school, you're starting to see the symptoms, you really have to make sure you're looking at the symptoms in conjunction. That it's not just a runny nose or some of your sort of allergy symptoms.
Right.
And so that's been a sort of a common discussion point with our nursing staff. The other piece is we really have to look at masking in 3 feet and who really then becomes a close contact, because those are the guidelines that DESE has given us in terms of when they become a close contact and when they don't become a close contact. And so we talked about that as a leadership team last week, just to make sure that, especially as we come fully indoors with the colder weather, that we're looking at all these pieces so that we're identifying true close contacts and that we have things in place such as the live connection daily for anybody who's quarantining.
So then, do we know for certain that Meadowbrook and Mountain View, their attendance is under the 95% because of quarantining?
We don't, I don't have the exact numbers on
Okay,
that.
so we don't
Right,
know that.
yeah.
Okay.
But I do know that the quarantine students are in there. And you have more quarantining going on at the elementary level than you do at the secondary level.
Right.
So if you look, I mean, from just a quick glance, you can see that the elementaries are below, obviously, the two secondary schools, with the exception of Maple Shade. And Maple Shade actually has had the fewest close contacts and quarantining of the elementaries.
Do we have like resource officers or anything like that in these buildings that are,
Resource officers?
yeah, or
We have a
attendance
resource officer
or-
for the district.
Okay,
And so he travels all the buildings. He's stationed at the high school, but he's in all of our buildings.
mhm,
Attendance generally is more through the principal's office.
okay,
And so if students, so this is where the MTSS team starts to look at, if we're seeing a trend where students, it's not something that's due to quarantining,
mhm,
then we have outreach to that family and try to connect there and figure out a plan to remedy that situation if a student's been out consistently.
okay.
Because in terms of the state accountability system, we have not heard anything out of the commissioner's office
No.
relative to this measure changing.
No.
So I think that that's just something that we need to keep a close eye on, because if we have targets that we need to hit in terms of our accountability status,
Right.
if they're considering quarantining part of our attendance measure, then
Yeah.
we need to really make sure our protocols are tight,
Yeah.
our procedures are tight, because, if taking on academics is one thing and we can control that, but this, we really need some
So,
partnership from
To that
others.
point, that's a great point. They may excuse quarantine
They may,
students.
but
yeah.
we don't have that
We don't have that in writing.
in
per
writing as
se.
of right now. So to
Um,
make sure we're keeping a really close eye on this, because,
So you might have different attendance numbers if they do
right.
excuse.
Oh, you
quarantine.
mean they'll move the goalposts on us again?
Well, that would be in a good way.
I know,
Yeah.
sometimes it's in our favor. but-
Yeah, true.
But even more reason to
They
make
still
sure.
haven't made the decision in terms of whether remote learning for an inclement weather day is allowed.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
So
I
that,
mean,
they
Yeah.
haven't really, somebody asked them, the commissioner
That's
that
all
last
right.
week, and
Don't
he
worry
kind
about
of punted on it.
and did Long Meadow get granted the waiver for 80%?
I believe for their high school. have,
They did get granted the waiver?
well, it's not a granting. You
Oh, it's
have
not?
to, basically, you put in a form attesting that you have the data.
Yeah.
Stating that you have hit that 80%. And so as long as, they can do an audit, I suppose. We know that they have the ability to do that.
We're good at those, though.
Yeah, we are good at those. So if they have the data, then they can submit the form and they attest the fact that they have this
And that's
Yeah.
it.
unless they're audited.
So they're mask optional in Long Meadow High School right now?
I believe so.
Huh. There you have it.
It's one of very few
Yeah.
across the
Yeah,
state.
there's
Right.
only
Yeah.
like,
Out of the LPVC, they're the only one.
there's
right
only
now.
18 across the state.
I think
Yeah.
we're approaching at the high school,
Yeah.
80% staff, but we
Students
would have to,
Getting close?
well, I think at our next outreach, hopefully, we have a certain percentage of families right now, we're not sure what the vaccination status is, so we're going to do some outreach. And if families are willing to continue to share with our building nurses, then we would put that data together. And obviously it's all we're seeing are percentages. We're not seeing any personal records or anything like that. Nurse's office has all of that locked up.
But
It's
Long Meadow
confidential.
must have done outreach to get their data, I imagine.
They did some outreach,
Yeah.
yes. Similar to the outreach we're gonna do.
Okay.
Is it, because I was gonna say, did you ask their nursing staff,
I asked their superintendent. I did.
oh, yeah, I meant that too, like, what did you do? Okay, yeah, all
And
right.
so it was family
Similar.
outreach, yeah.
Okay.
When will we look at attendance again? because I would like to see these numbers
Sure.
compared to the next numbers.
Yeah, so we can bring this back, we can bring it back anytime, but certainly at the mid-year when we're presenting again, we would, present data around and bring this, but I can bring it back whenever.
I would say no later than January.
Yeah,
I think those
that's what
numbers
I'm
are
thinking too, because I do.
nerve-wracking enough.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem bad. Like, I think like for folks to recognize, like when you see things in the 90s, typically you say, oh, wow, that's great. But the targets are 95%. And that equates to a lot of days out of school. Like when you actually do the math,
And some of the schools, they took a dip.
they took a,
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
down 3 percentage points.
So,
Right.
I mean,
I do truly wonder, only because I've experienced this myself, where the parents will call you they'll email you in the morning saying, little Bobby isn't feeling 100%.
Right.
We know it isn't this, but we're erring on the side of caution.
And we actually
Or
asked them. to
we're
do
not
that.
sure about mom or dad. They came in contact with somebody, but they really don't have it and they don't know, but they don't count under proper quarantine. It's just the parent
Right.
doing due diligence on their part.
Right.
And I wonder sometimes how much I'm not telling the school nurse, oh yeah, unless it's more than 2 days. And then I might say, hey, so I'm hoping that's what it is. But again, it doesn't look.
and I understand that,
Yeah.
especially with winter coming too. I'm sure there might be even a bigger dip
Game of
than
Thrones
this,
reference.
but I'd rather our schools being proactive and
Right.
what are our action plans and what
Right.
are we doing to make sure that
Make sure the
So
families
I
feel
think one of the
comfortable
things
with
that we'll have
theirs.
to do is we'll have to identify so we can give you, here's without the quarantined, here's with the quarantined. I'll see if we can do that, separate that out. Because to the point you're making, the schools have action plans around students whom they have not had contact with, and they're seeing, 3 absences in a row without any kind of contact. And so now they are contacting families. And families get a call every day when they have an absence where there's been no contact.
Well, thank you. That's
Sure.
helpful and definitely something that we need to continue to keep an eye on and make sure that we're offering support in whatever way we can, because it'd be good to see those go up.
Ms. Brown's going to walk us through some of the survey data that we got this fall and give you an idea of how the answers come in terms of when you see the reports, what it means.
So the well-being survey asks about supportive relationships, challenging feelings, and positive feelings. And everything is presented in terms of percent favorable. So if it said that 67% challenging feelings, that doesn't mean 67% kids showed that. That means 67% of kids actually did not really respond with challenging feelings. And so it was only 33% who had the challenging feelings. So it's always in the positive. And so I'm just going to show you 3 to 5 because these are the questions that they asked. And you can see 3 to 5, 91% of kids felt like they had supportive relationships, and we were in the highest percentile compared to others nationally. 73% positive feelings, so we were a little less in there, but still high up there. And then the 67 of challenging feelings, meaning again that was really only 33% who were I lost my word. Who are saying that they are experiencing challenging feelings?
If you can go back.
Sure.
That's fine. That's either one who has supportive relationships. So early on, if you
12.
remember, before we were fully into more comprehensive surveys, one of our targets was always building supportive relationships, that in every school, every child has a go-to person. So to see 3 through 5 at 91%, we're excited about that. We want that to grow. We want the 87% here in 6 through 12 to grow. It's also really optimistic anyway to see how we compare nationally.
Yeah.
The fact that we're in the highest percentile there at 87% is nice to see. We would like to be above 87%, but it's interesting. So it gives you an idea of where the country is too.
Yeah. And then for the K-2 kiddos, they don't self-report. So these are teacher perceptions. And these SEL skills like emotional regulation, social awareness, self-management. You can see on the right-hand side, these are the percentage points that they dipped since the last time they were given this survey, the teachers, about their students. And it's not surprising because a lot of these skills are learned by being in person with other kids. So.
And the hope we're seeing this improve as we go through the year.
yes.
Yeah.
It's a really great point. I think when you put in perspective, like our current second grade, this will be hopefully their first full year of
Yes.
school since they've come
Right.
into East Long Meadow.
Our youngest students.
Our youngest students. This will be hopefully, knock on wood, their first complete experience
Right.
In an academic year. So that makes sense that there's some of those.
Some developmental and then academic, obviously.
I kind of noticed, which is, and I'm
Keep that
assuming.
in mind as we go to the academic part of this.
Right, because like I noticed like at a second grade level, which is kind of where I've been at, is that it's on the plus side, there's no clickiness having started yet. I think where I am, because they haven't had the experience of being together enough to create that.
Yeah.
Just to give you an idea of how
Not
like,
even learning
there's
how
a
to do
plus,
that.
I suppose, but you know, they're still young,
Mhm.
which is refreshing, but at the same time, they're still young.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, it's impressive that we're still seeing, say, 79% of emotional regulation, and that's down 5% from when the teachers last reported on this.
Yeah.
Because to Strulio's point, the students haven't been through a full school year, and so to have that structure and be able to understand the routines and different parts of the day, that's impressive.
And as much as we're saying our doors are open, our kids are back, their K-2 experience is not, they have not had a typical start to a school year. They are still wearing masks, they're eating in their lunchrooms, they're keeping their distance from individuals. There's a lot to say for how the setup of their K-2 experience is also environmentally impacting them and impacting the survey results. So. I have a question. Is there, so I'm looking at the 6 through 12 Caldwell being survey results. Is 60%, well, it's 30% they're having challenging feelings, right?
Well,
40%, yeah.
40, sorry. Is there a way to identify those kids to target anything, to try to support
So,
them?
There's a way to flag students that are feeling this type of challenge, so that we can put certain supports in place.
Okay.
On the dashboard side.
Yeah.
And the color coding helps us kind of zoom in on kids that we might need to check in on, and counselors to check in on.
Is that what we're doing?
Yeah, it gives the counselors, guidance counselors, adjustment counselors, and administrators quicker information so that they can try to connect with students and put certain supports in place sooner rather than later.
Okay.
Rather than seeing some type of episode manifest in a classroom or, cafeteria or in the building. If someone's reporting this, we're able to move faster.
So that's why the dashboards are beautiful for the MTSS, because we can look at the whole child and all of these different aspects.
But it's not something that, say, the school is seeing.
No.
It's the counseling staff and administrators.
So then the counselors are responsible for going through this data and looking at which students they need to meet with and try to support, however they're feeling. Like the same thing with the positive feelings. So then the other percentage, 36%. They're not having.
Nice.
Good one.
Okay,
Not
Good,
good
great,
at
good
that.
catch.
there's two sides.
Samson next
This
year.
side is more for trends, so we can see, how are our kids in general feeling? And you can disaggregate it by different subgroups and just kind of get some ideas of things you might want to do as a whole school. And then there's the dashboard side that really tells us, we don't get to see what kids answer necessarily, but it gives us their own personal trend.
Okay.
And these are pretty basic questions in the well-being, in the past week, how often have you felt angry,
Right.
sad,
No, and
frustrated?
I think it's important that we're getting this data, but I just want to make sure
we're using the
Oh, yeah.
data
Right.
and because we want 100%.
Yes,
You know, it's
exactly.
great that we have
Right.
64%, but we want,
Yes.
Yeah, we want these to
So-
be higher.
yes.
Yeah.
And, hence the reason why we have extra adjustment counselors and,
Right.
the river.
But the nice thing is that we now have those teams working. So they can start to look at trends. They can also make recommendations. And it's a cross section of educators.
Mhm.
So it's not just the administrators, sort of making the recommendations and so forth. There's true discussion and perspective coming across within those discussions.
How often do they take the surveys?
The well-being is 3 times a year.
Okay. Right.
Moving into some of the more academic assessments, just as we look at the Mcats results, just wanted to quickly give everyone a quick reminder on the scoring that ranges from not meeting expectations to exceeding expectations. It gives you the number scale there, and then as you go through the graphs, that gives you an idea of what they're talking about when they say, partially meeting expectations, or exceeding expectations. As we go through, similar to some of the things we saw with the climate survey or the social emotional survey, we're seeing a lot of our students sort of in that middle ground. We're not seeing students, as you look at the different grade levels, in the blue as much as they used to be, or in the green. It's a combination of green and yellow. Thankfully, we're not seeing a huge amount in the red, but we're seeing some in the red. We're seeing a lot more in the yellow, unfortunately, which is that partially meeting. So as we go in and you look at grades 3 through 8, in the ELA, we did do a little bit better than what students were scoring at the state level, but we're still seeing more in that partially meeting, and even more than past years in the not meeting. And so these are things that you'll see as we start to look past MCAS and we look at some of our iReady results. That's going to be where we have to dig in and start to see, what are the standards that are most challenging for students at different grade levels. As you go to math, math was more challenging across the board than ELA and reading in the MCAS. And so you see a good deal more in the green and yellow. And actually at the highest level, we're a little bit below the state percentage. And so these are things that not only we're looking at across the district, but each individual building is looking at this.
To underscore that, when you look at those numbers, so even if you go back to English language arts, I mean, we are split right now. We have 563 kids who either met or exceeded expectations. We have 524 who did not meet grade level expectations in grades 3 to 8. And that's a baseline based off of a year that was challenging, but that's our baseline now.
Right.
And to your point, how you started this conversation, this is not, something we're going to fix overnight.
Right.
Because this is going to take time. Because that is our reality now. Like we have 524 kids in grades 3 to 8.
And you'll see that borne out again, as you look at other assessments. But we have the iReady assessments here. And the interesting thing that you'll also see is that that's what's going on in the state, and that's what's going on nationally. It doesn't make it any easier.
No.
It just
It's our reality
it's
now.
the reality across the board.
And that's the reality that we have to now begin to put a different sense of urgency around.
Right.
Half of our kids did not meet state expectations last year. And more than half did not meet in math. Like that's our context. That's what we are working from. That's what our goals are going to be set from the state. Like that's a very different context.
I'm not sure what the state accountability is going to look like, but I think our goals certainly have to target
Right, but
this.
regardless,
Yeah.
that's their last measure for us. So
Right.
at some point, and that's how our kids perform. Like that's our context now. We
Right.
have to think about that as we
go forward.
And
We also need to look at what kind of adjustments
we're
do we
making.
need to make.
And DESE hasn't changed their expectations at all. It's the same as it would have been like in 2018. Just
So
making
we
sure that
don't
they didn't
know
adjust.
exactly what the accountability, so we're not going to get an accountability report
Last
as
right.
we've gotten in the past. So it's hard to exactly know what they're going to go forward with in
Yeah.
terms of, so the question we were talking about around attendance. What exactly is that going to look like, given that you have quarantining going on? You also have on the other side test and stay. So there's a lot of variables
Yeah.
that can be in that discussion.
What about grade 10 math? What do you think about it relative to state percentages?
It's very similar to what we're seeing in all the areas that we have more in that partially meeting than we've had in years past.
Right, but if you compare to the state, we're actually significantly
Lower.
lower.
So that's
That's
something,
really the only one. The others were at least at or above state.
right.
I just think that's a comparable statistic. So I'm wondering what we're seeing with that. And I have a 10th grader, so I asked specifically.
Yeah, no, what they're starting to do, well, they took the PSATs this year so that they can break it down even more individually for our students and start to academically plan individually for them.
And
Based
all the
on-
students took the PSAT?
First
During-
time.
During school,
Yeah.
Yes.
yeah.
So-
The other thing that
And we paid for, the district paid for
Yes.
it.
Correct.
So
Yeah,
we will
it's the only
have,
way we can
we'll
do
be
it.
able to break that information, we'll be able to see growth over time because it's the 9th, 10th, and 11th grade. But there's also, the College Board works with Khan Academy to create personalized paths in Khan Academy for weaknesses that students have. So they're gonna be using a lot of that data for interventions for kids as well.
How about retest percentages right now? How many of our kids are actively looking at retaking this?
That's a
You
good
asked a
question.
good
I have,
question.
we have.
That window opens.
The MCAS?
Yeah.
Oh, no,
This
this,
right?
they
Why-
did math
why
last
do you
week.
retake it?
Last,
Yeah,
Only
they-
if they
they've
didn't
already
hit
registered
the
kids.
competency determination.
so far,
They'd have to
So if they
retake
didn't
it.
pass
they
it
didn't pass,
last
so right now
year,
we have.
they had to do makeups.
I
And it
see.
was last
with
week
them.
was math.
Oh, they're
last
on
week was
that. They're on
English.
top of it. I don't have numbers for you, but
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
The
happening.
guidance
That's
department is
Also
the one
opened
that
up
sets that
for
up.
scholarship purposes, also for seal of biliteracy.
Well, just thinking like those are larger numbers than we're used to, so
Yeah.
79 kids resitting and
Yeah.
125 resitting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's,
I do feel, and I don't want to I do feel that our weakness has always been math. I kind of feel that historically, through time with our school system, I just feel like it's always been math.
Mm.
And it's like, I feel like we're at the point, this year doesn't count, but I think we need to think about that moving forward.
Yeah,
And I know
that's
you think
why
about
we're-
this all the time.
Every school I've been in, math is always
It's
lower.
always, so then
It's
what is
always
it?
lower. It's
You
very
know?
different. The standards are very, very different than ELA.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, is it fair from the state's perspective, or, I mean, our kids are doing well in terms, are our kids doing well when they take the SATs and they take the PSATs? Do our students, are they up to snuff with the other kids that are taking SATs and PSATs across the country?
That's what we'll
As
find
opposed
out.
to just us? Yeah, but I mean, like historically in the
Yeah.
past, I think we've done pretty well, but then you see this and it just
Right.
deflates you, you know?
Right, but this is our data right now.
Yeah.
Right.
So we really need to be thinking about what can we do differently, because it's not.
It's not where we've
Change.
been.
No.
Right.
Both universally and immediately.
Right.
Um,
and I think Heather, like to your credit, like you've been working to make some shifts alongside of some teacher leaders relative to curricula that's coming into the district, but I think the name of the game, like the state has said, is acceleration. Not only do we need to accelerate kids, but as a district, like that's where that urgency needs to come in. We need to work to accelerate the progress of our students, because
Yeah.
those 3rd through 8th graders who are already performing in a very different place compared to the current 10th
Right.
graders
Right.
are our future 10th graders.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's a very scary picture in some ways to think about. That's our future 10th grade, which is
Yep.
our future graduation rate. And that's a message, that's a call to action, like on behalf of all 5 of our buildings, like to really step up and say, this is our current reality and how are we going to address it? Like,
Right.
opinions aside and then like that.
I know, it would be
that's
good to ask, I'm sure you ask the school, you ask the classroom teachers all the time, what do they see, what do they hear, what are the trends? I mean, I don't know, it just seems.
So actually, that's a good segue into, you know,
I
some of the-
Yes, yes,
Good work, Beth.
segue.
I like that.
Commercial.
it's not just a vehicle.
So iReady is something that we can use immediately. It's very helpful because it breaks down kids' skills into domains, and it actually you can drill down and will tell you what their strengths are and things that they need to be working on. And you can do that as for individual students or for groups of kids in your class. So to your point, it's a tool that we can use to see what skills are kids weak in that they need to be strong in order to access grade level content.
Mhm.
And so it's been very helpful. This is on all the way to the left with the national norms, and then national in school because so I would look at the in school because we're comparing our kids to in school. Our Massachusetts in school, and then the ELPS results from this past October. And the dark green is mid on grade level or above. The light green is early on grade level. The yellow is 1 grade below. The light red is 2 grades below, and the dark red is 3 or more grades below, which you don't see at this grade because you can't really be 2 grades below at kindergarten. But you can see that compared to even Massachusetts, the kindergarten looks like a good foundation there. And then as we go up, you'll start to see some more of the gaps that we were just talking about.
This is math.
This is all math.
This is math.
Yes.
So the little second graders we were talking about are doing, like, they're kind of like better.
But again, you have more in the yellow than we're used to seeing.
Way.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I mean, to the point we're talking about, right? We can look at this and go, phew, but we can also look at this and have a sense of urgency of, we got to get them to where they need to be.
And Beth, to the point that, or the question you were asking, this allows the teachers to dig in more around specific challenges and I think Heather was saying this, that their students may be having. So you can actually meet them where they are in their current learning.
Yeah.
And try to provide support, which we need to do.
Right.
And so that's something that we've been talking about with the principals. We talked about it last week because we went through all these results with them and how we're using common planning time to discuss this because their common planning time is with grade level colleagues. And so
Right.
they can start to look at this and plan together.
Both for interventions and for, grouping in their classes and
Right.
working with kids. The other thing to know is, this is what iReady standard view. They also have a beginning of the year view where they actually allow the yellow would be considered beginning grade level because obviously kids really haven't gotten much of the grade level curriculum. So that's something to think about too. But this is just being in the standard view gives us more of an idea of where those gaps are and can help us with planning. These graphs are more useful for just talking about it. It's not really useful for planning. Like Mr. Smith said, it's really those student reports and those grouping reports that really help us dig down into what kids are working on.
What is the dark red at the bottom of some?
3 or more grades below.
That's why it doesn't show up until 4th grade. Makes sense.
Yes.
And these are areas where we're seeing obviously percentages we haven't seen before. And so that's where we have to really dig in.
But we compared it so that you can see again, not that we're not focusing on this, but it is a nationwide and a statewide trend.
Well, does that mean that nationally and statewide, there aren't any students below 3 grade levels or below? Why is there no dark red on anybody but ELPS?
Right, we see more.
Oh, because the ELPS was created by me and I superimposed it onto iReady. So I used a different shade of red than they did.
Okay.
So can you see there are two different shades
yeah,
of red?
now
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, so,
okay.
yeah, sorry. I did not match it as well as I'd like
So
to.
if you're looking at grade 4, you get 17%.
Yes, it's a little deceiving, but yes, so
20%
their
math.
darker red, even though our darker red's
Yes.
darker than their darker red.
Yes.
It's just-
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, good question.
But I do think like, going back to Beth's comment earlier, like this, if we're thinking about the beginning of triangulation of data,
Mhm.
like this is speaking to what our MCAS results show
Yes.
us.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
you know, it was a difficult year, but this is an additional measure that's saying,
Yeah.
like, there is a sense of urgency because
And
these
that's
kids
actually,
need support.
right, that's a great point, because as you're discussing this with, a group of teachers,
Mhm.
they're gonna wanna see, whoa, wait, that's one assessment. Well, no,
No,
it's not. You're seeing this, and, maybe you're gonna be seeing it as you turn in grades for the first term.
and that was what I was actually just gonna ask. Do we know, and maybe we don't at this point, but have we thought about having conversations with families about how report cards may look and feel a little bit different in terms of what kids might be receiving? I mean, I find it hard to imagine that with 2 sets of data right now that are trending towards maybe not the type of progress we're used to seeing in our district, that then this set of report cards that will come out is going to maybe look for most families the way it would typically look.
Mhm.
Because if we're seeing for the first time kids 2-3 years below grade level,
Right.
how does that then translate into current performance on grade level? And
Yeah,
our
does it
families
correlate,
prepped
does
for
it
that?
correlate though? Does it? It probably doesn't, right? Because none of this is used for grading.
Right,
Well,
but
yeah, the standards.
We're working on
standards
calibrating it
are the
more.
standards.
Okay.
And if you have gaps, especially like in math,
Yep.
your prerequisite knowledge will have a direct impact on your capacity in most cases to tackle the current grade level standards.
Yeah, unless it goes to pace and then the whole group is slower, and then I don't know the grades would be comparable to test results.
I think like when you think about things like, trying to think of a good example, like multi-digit multiplication. If I'm struggling and I'm 2 years below grade level and I'm struggling with single digit, I'm gonna have a really difficult time in 5th grade accessing multi-digit multiplication because my single digit multiplication might be weak. So how then does that translate to maybe not getting that M on my report card this semester when typically I'm used to seeing those right out of the gates?
Right, but if the tide is not rising, everyone collectively, and the tide is lower, are we pacing the same we would on a norm, if this is in a normal year? Are we pacing slower, so thus they're meeting
But that's a different
benchmarks
grade level.
later?
So
Yeah,
like single digit multiplication will be third grade,
Yeah.
multi-digit multiplication will be 5th grade. So if
Right.
I'm in 5th grade, my
Standardized grades are
expectation,
criteria based, not norm based, right?
Okay,
So yeah, you might see a lot of the kids in the class might not have the M,
right.
but as an individual parent, you don't have that to compare to. So you see that's something that you're not used to seeing because
But don't grades reflect where the class is at the time
it should reflect where the
where the
kid
kid
is.
is.
relative to where the class
No.
is
No,
trying to
relative
be?
to the
Like-
expectation of
Not-
the
Does
standard.
the pace of the class, each individual class change on a yearly basis so that they're hitting different, you said expectations, but I've said norms, so I guess we're different.
Or
Well, no,
standards.
Standards, yeah. Is that change on a yearly basis so that some years when we're lower?
Right, the ideal should be
Yeah.
what Mrs. Trulio is saying, but the human element to it is that there is always going to be a part of that pacing piece. And that's hard to separate out. So to answer your question, we haven't had that discussion or outreach yet, but these are discussions that we have to have first with the principals and then think about some outreach, because that's probably one of the harder conversations for a teacher to have or to present, is that, that report card is going to be a little different. And when it's a standards-based report card, it should be looked at differently, but society is still struggling with how they're receiving that. Because they're not looking at really as progress on the standards. They're still thinking in terms of, are they an
B,
A, or are they a B,
Yeah,
or
that's
are
right.
they
Yeah.
a C? And that, if you remember, when we moved to a standards-based report card at the elementary level, that was a big piece of the education. And unfortunately, I don't know that we've accomplished or anyone's really accomplished that well to knock out the thinking, okay, that's all great,
We have to do
meeting
more.
expectations, but are they an A?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
And so I think that's still ingrained in many people in society.
Yes.
Yeah, no, and I get that, and that's, to that extent, a little different, but my thought is that we're pacing slower this year, so
We are pacing.
maybe we won't see as big a difference on the report cards as we are on the MCAS, because this is a set snapshot.
But we can pace slower, but we can't at the same time, because those windows for 3rd through 8th and 10th are gonna open. So when you think about ensuring that all the standards are addressed prior to those MCAS windows opening, you still have to move at a pretty good clip in order to hit those standards.
Yeah, but I would venture to bet, and I don't know this for sure, it's all anecdotal, that we are, relative to the state, doing relatively well because we focused on education throughout the beginning of the pandemic versus logistics. So I'm hoping that it was all worthwhile. And so when we see ourselves relative to the state moving forward as we hit those different snapshots, we'll actually see that at least we're not slipping as much as other districts, hopefully.
Hopefully,
I mean, I think a big piece of it is going to be digging in and
taking action.
getting the time. And that's the hardest thing, is scheduling that time so that they can have these discussions with colleagues. So they have a game plan for when they walk back into the classroom with their students and say, okay, Gordon, Heather, and Greg, we should figure out some group work time for them around X. Multiple digit, well, not so much for Greg, for Heather and Gordon, multiple digit multiplication. And so it's doing that.
Yeah.
And that's a hard balance, because
Then they're out of the classroom.
Yeah.
right. Well, or you're taking time to do multiple groups
Yeah.
doing multiple things.
Yep.
While also thinking, okay, I also need to lesson plan for continuing
Right.
on grade level standards. And so it's trying to figure out those, and that's both building scheduling, but it's also individual classroom scheduling, because now they're thinking, okay, what am I changing in my weekly schedule to
Yeah.
make this happen?
But I think inevitably, realistically, our baseline is lower than it would have been if
Yes.
not for, right?
Absolutely.
So
Right.
if we acknowledge that and then
All of our sleeves.
move forward, yes. I
Yeah.
guess that's what we're doing, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've identified it, now we have to
Do
react.
something about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think if on the math side too, because you switch to standards-based report cards at the middle school level for math.
We're wearing much more active.
During last year, they stopped during the heart of the pandemic, and they're switching back again.
To standards.
Yeah.
So again, like,
Yeah.
when you look at those numbers, 16%, 18%, 14%, multiple grade levels below, like that will be a very different story, especially when you're thinking about 6th, 7th, and 8th grade parents who are gonna get a standards-based report card for math.
Right.
The good news is, in terms of transparency though, is that they'll also get a copy of the iReady report.
Yeah.
Agreed, yeah.
Which is, and it's interesting when you look at, sorry.
Sorry.
Do we
Even though
correlate
there's-
that in-house internally, the iReady versus the grades?
Not yet.
Okay.
Coordinating the schedule, you mean?
No, just,
Like-
See that they're matching up,
yes.
Yeah.
giving us similar stories,
Mhm.
pictures, yeah, okay.
That,
Part of
those,
the
that's
big
more of
long-term
the
plan.
discussion.
I mean, when you
Me
do
too.
look at it, I'm looking at 6th, 7th, and 8th right now.
Math
I'm-
really.
I'm on math right now. I mean, we are, I mean, it's not great, but we're doing better in terms of, I think, national and mass in schools.
Well, when you look at the
We have
8th
more
grade,
green, we
that's-
have
that's-
less red.
a lot
you
more
know,
green than actually
yeah.
what we expected, given
Yeah.
what we looked at 3 through 8 and MCAS.
And it could be they're more comfortable taking this, it'll be interesting to their comfort level of taking this. The MCAS has a lot of weight on their shoulders too, going into it. I think whether we feel this way or not, you could sit there as a 3rd grade teacher and say, oh, don't worry about it, they're testing the teachers and not you.
Well,
The
the other,
teacher's teaching what you need, the kids still think it's on them,
yeah.
or they're not taking it seriously, pick one.
The one thing about the iReady reading is it really is just reading. It doesn't have the writing component that the Mcas has, so that's one piece that we don't have. But yeah, I mean, just to that point, the DART tool isn't even updated, so we can't even compare to like districts because they can't account for the variety of experiences that kids had from town to town.
So maybe
So-
they're not gonna have those compatibility benchmarks.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They should
I
have
don't know, I
their
think we
act
might do
together. They
relatively
expect
well. I'm
us.
thinking we should have.
Well, we'll have benchmarks.
Yeah, but
We haven't
I
heard
mean, the
from-
DART, though,
yeah,
in
we
terms
haven't
of
heard from
other
the state.
comparable districts.
So, I mean, there's obviously a number of things you can take away, but these are just some of the key points. Going back to the earlier slides, we do have students who are feeling supported, a high percentage, and have positive relationships in all of our schools. We also have students who continue to achieve better than the state average, but some of the things that we are seeing is, if you go down to that last bullet point, we're seeing a higher percentage than we're used to in that yellow to, if you look at the Mcas colors, the green and yellow. If you look at the iReady colors, it's the yellow into the sort of the pale red. And so that's where we really do have to dig in. And, we've been having these discussions with the principals, and now we need to take that more to the schools. Heather's been giving more training around how to use the iReady information and how grade level teams can start to use it and break it out.
Can you remind me again, because I feel like it changed at one point. What are we contracted with through Curriculum Associates for what grade levels? Did some of them only receive assessment, but some of them receive assessment and instruction opportunities?
So, 3 through 8 has reading and math instruction.
Okay,
It's K to 2.
2 that only has assessment?
And correct.
Okay.
And part of that is we utilize ST Math, and we were under an ST Math grant that we had to have a certain amount of minutes. We're having a really hard time doing that. So to try
Yeah, their minutes
to
are
divide
high.
it up, but it's something we're looking at.
That's
trying to
actually
streamline
K5,
that.
isn't it?
I'm sorry?
That's K5 in terms of the minutes for ST Math.
Right.
Yeah.
But
But the good thing to know is that kids can utilize the instructional piece at home, 3 through 8 for both subjects.
through the reporting, because you have instruction and assessment, there should be links
Oh,
to
yeah.
lessons that
Yeah,
educators
That's
can
what we've
use.
been showing folks.
So
yeah.
just in terms of thinking about planning and ways that we can support educators to Gordon's point earlier about moving forward with current grade level, but then having to think about ways that they can accelerate or fill gaps from previous grade levels. That's at least the starting point.
Yeah,
A
we have the
lesson plan
teacher toolbox.
can come to the table
Yeah.
and be discussed about how it might help this student versus that student.
Correct.
So it's not like they're starting from scratch, like the
Right,
things
they
that
don't
we
have to
purchased
reinvent
have,
this.
No.
They have the resources. It's a question of actually accessing them
accessing them
and taking the time to piece it together and say, okay, here's my plan.
but just like affirm, like there are things that have been purchased
Yes,
pre-pandemic that can support us based on our current context.
absolutely. All right.
We'll use this then to start to set our goals
Correct.
as a district as we move forward.
So we met with the leadership team around all of this. We had a draft of our SMART goals. We've revised that with a lot of what we're seeing here in terms of action steps. But what we've asked now over the next few weeks is for the buildings to look at and revise their building SMART goals. But more importantly, just when we present in December, what are the key action steps that you're going to take as a building that connect to this goal here, for the district? And so that's what they're thinking about in terms of just key bullet points that they can put in there and explain, here's what we're doing, and here's how it's starting to present itself at these grade levels. And so, that was the discussion last week, and that will continue to be the discussion as we prepare to present all of the goals. Okay. Oh, I got a TV presentation on this one, sorry. Moving to new business in 7.1. We updated part-time and support staff, their employment charts. This is a chart that we've had in place for quite a few years, but we had not updated it for the next 3 years. But now that we have contracts in place for our paraprofessionals and for our food service workers, and we're at least in the final year for our custodians and our secretaries, bless you, we wanted to make sure we finalize this. We also needed to make sure that we were ahead of minimum wage, which continues to go up through 2023. So I think at your places, you have the previous 3 years, and then these are the recommendations for going forward. Some of this is rooted in the contracts themselves. So these numbers are numbers that we're looking at and making sure that if we're getting a sub, we're doing it at either the hiring level or just below the hiring level for a permanent staff member. Questions?
Gordon, the bottom dates in the two charts, so the top is January 22.
Where are we looking at?
Right
On
in
the
the middle
new-
of the chart.
Okay.
So the lower dates,
Yep,
Here.
that needs to be January.
Yeah.
2022. Yep.
Sorry, I didn't
All
pick
right.
up on that.
That's okay.
It's all right.
Oh, all the dates are off there.
yeah, all
Yeah.
three of them.
We just wanted to look back in history and see what it could have been.
Or pay people for past hours
Yeah,
worked.
there you
It's
go.
a totally different thing.
So this increase will be as of January 1st, just like it has been in the past, when minimum wage increases. Because that always plays a role.
Thank you for catching that.
So if there's no further discussion, I would move that we approve policy GDG, part-time and support staff employment, with one amendment that the years on the lower chart mimic those years on the top chart, so 22 through 2024.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Motion made by Greg, second by Beth. Any further discussion?
I just have a quick question. When the numbers change, aren't we supposed to put this as not as this isn't the policy, the
This would be more the,
GDG, or it's a
dash E as an
dash
exhibit.
E?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Good one.
I
So-
know, it's.
Good at the
Wow.
detail.
That's someone who's on the policy.
Yeah,
Like, this changes, it can't be
that's
policy.
your policy nerd. I would modify my motion to include the letter E on that as the exhibit.
All right, motion made by Greg, second by Beth. Any additional discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. And that motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
And then we were gonna move to, a report out on the conference.
It was different. I mean, there were 618 registered in person. I'm not sure if everybody showed up. But everything was spaced out. I mean, it was definitely not nearly as crowded as it's been in the past. There was no exhibit hall. There were really no formal receptions. There were a couple of like loosely put together cocktail hours prior to dinners. In the past, we used to go upstairs for dinner. Everything was everything was based out of the grand ballroom, which is on the first floor of the hotel, where they took the portable wall down where the exhibit hall used to be, and they just spread out tables. The dinner tables were round tables with no more than 6 people sitting at a dinner table because of social distancing and everything. But it was definitely, just the whole thing had a different feel, but it was nice to get together in person again. All the resolutions passed with little debate. I mean, the delegate assembly was very, very poorly attended on Saturday morning. There were only 65 people in person with another 40 remote. Less than half of the districts in the state were represented.
Wow.
There was, there was a little bit of debate around the recess, but nothing major. The delegate assembly was over in less than an hour and a half, which is highly unusual. The sessions were very timely. I attended one on MOUs and policies, and I found it interesting. because we have an excellent relationship with our ELEA here. There are districts out there that were giving away the farm to get agreements. And it's a testament to us and to central office, the types of relationships we have with everybody in town, how we were able to move forward almost seamlessly. To hear some of these stories, it's amazing. And to speak to how we were able to hit the ground running with this remote and the learning, I believe that we are ahead of a lot of these other districts simply because we were ready and everybody was working towards a common goal. Some of the sessions I attended were on policy, MOUs, trying to figure out how to move forward. There were sessions that addressed the literacy gap that we discussed tonight. There were sessions on social emotional and how you bring back the students to where they should be and some of the things that they're going through. The Friday general session was actually the highlight of the whole conference because they brought in students and we got the students' perspective. We talked about what we're going to do for the students. The students talked to us about their needs, which put a whole different light on it. So it was very well, that was very well attended and it was very well received. And like I said, it was interesting to sit there and hear what students were looking for. And a lot of the points we've hit on here tonight, they're just looking for that support. They want somebody to be able to talk to. They want to see a body as opposed to looking through a camera lens. I mean, again, it was different. It had a different feel. The cautious optimism for next year is it'll go back to the way it used to be, but who knows what's going to happen in a year. So if anybody has any questions, if not, it was enjoyable. It was nice to get together with some people I haven't seen in a couple of years, quite honestly.
I'm glad that you were able to attend and that you see alignment between what we're talking about and what is happening at the state level. So it's always positive.
Thank you.
And the commissioner did, in his keynote address on Wednesday night, did address his Friday afternoon emails and got a charge out of everybody because he knew exactly what he was doing.
Yeah.
He knew, but he,
Just change it up to him, it's Monday, from the
Monday
desktop.
morning?
yeah, from the desktop. He mentioned that.
Monday afternoon.
So,
No time's a good time, Gordon, right?
yeah.
Sure.
I don't mind the emails, it's when he calls me that I'm a little nervous.
All right, well, with that, the meeting should come to an end. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, LCAP, for filming. And you're ready to adjourn. Motion.
Move to adjourn.
Motion made by Greg, second by Bill. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. And that motion carries 5-0. Thank you.